Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana
Krishna
Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jayom Vishnupada Paramansa Paribrajaka Charja Stotara Shata Shishimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Gir Vrindavan Ki Jai Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam namaskricham naram chaivam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudidayet. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloker bhakti bhavati naishtiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening, Canto 1, Chapter 14, Text 42, is it? Dviti uvacha. Dviti uvacha. Padam Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabudhara Bahuna Asashe Putrayor Mayam Ma Krudha Brahmanad Prabhu Driti Uvacha Vadam Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabodhara Bahuna Asha Se Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmanad Prabhu Ditiruvacha Vadam Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabodhara Bahuna Ashase Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmanad Prabhu Ditiruvacha Vadam Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabodhara Bahuna Ashase Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmanad Prabhu Ditiruvacha Vadam Bhagavat Sakshat Sunabodhara Bahuna Ashase Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmano Prabhu Ditiruvacha Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabodhara Bahuna Ashasai Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmanad Prabhu Vadam Bhagavat Sakshat Ladies? Vadham Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabodhara Bahuna Ashase Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmanad Prabhu Trituvacha Vadham Bhagavata Sakshat Sunabodhara Sahuna Ashasase Putrayor Mayam Makrudhad Brahmana Prabhu Driti Uvacha Diti said Vadham, the killing, Bhagavata, by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sakshat, directly, Sunabha, with his Sudarshan weapon, Udara, very magnanimous, Bahuna, by the arms, Ashase, I desire, Putrayaho, of the sons, Mayam, of mine, Ma, never. Never be it so. Krudhat, by the rage. Brahmandat, of the Brahmins. Prabhu, O my husband. Diti said, it is very good that my sons will be magnanimously killed by the arms of the personality of Godhead with the Sudarshan weapon. O my husband, may they never be killed by the wrath of Brahmana devotees. Responsibly, Diti said, it is very good that my sons will be magnanimously killed by the arms of the personality of Godhead with his Sudarshan weapon. O my husband, may they never be killed by the wrath of the Brahmana devotees. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When Diti heard from her husband that the great souls would be angered by the activities of her sons, she was very anxious. She thought that her sons might be killed by the wrath of the Brahmins. The Lord does not appear when the Brahmins become angry at someone, because the wrath of a Brahmin is sufficient in itself. It certainly appears, however, when his devotee simply becomes sorry. A devotee of the Lord never prays to the Lord to appear for the sake of the troubles the miscreants cause for him, and he never bothers him by asking for protection. Rather, the Lord is anxious to give protection to the devotees. Diti knew well that the killing of her sons by the Lord would also be his mercy, and therefore she says that the wheel and arms of the Lord are magnanimous. If someone is killed by the wheel of the Lord and is thus fortunate enough to see the arms of the Lord, that is sufficient for his liberation. Such good fortune is not achieved even by the great sages. The verse again. Diti said, "It is very good that my sons will be magnanimously killed by the arms of the personality of Godhead with a Sudarshan weapon. O my husband, may they never be killed by the wrath of the Brahmana devotees." Om Agyanati Manasya Ganananjana Salakaya Chaksurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Bachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yatkri Pataraham Bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. So this unfortunate situation has a kind of a hidden blessing to it, although Diti, in a sense, fell down and became a victim of sex desire, and her sons were born as demons as a result. These demons were actually killed by Krishna. So in a sense, they were fortunate, even though they were demonic and they were demons. There's a picture on our altar of Lord Nrsingadev sitting on the throne of either Jaya Vijaya, which indicates that because they were residents of Vaikuntha at one point, that he could sit on that throne, and he never sat on the throne of other demons. Of course, they didn't have thrones, but he didn't sit on them. So this kind of curse is kind of a mixture of a blessing and a curse. It was a curse because her sons were born as demons, and it was a blessing because they were ultimately killed by the mercy of the Lord. So this happens quite often, that rules are sometimes broken. Of course, Diti was an advanced devotee, and even though she had a temporary fall down, you might say, she was blessed by having her sons, which were her own sons, who were demons, killed by the Lord, and therefore they were liberated. So sometimes these curses can be blessings in disguise. When Parikshit Maharaj was cursed by Shringi, the son of Samaka Rishi, he was cursed to die within 7 days. But as a result, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. It had been spoken many times before, but it just shows that this sort of curse turned out to be a great blessing. And this also happened when Krishna was attacked by Bhishma on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Bhishma was attacking Arjuna, but it so happened that when he was firing arrows at him, some of the arrows pierced the body of his driver, Krishna, and drew blood. And this is a sort of very sinful activity, that one is piercing the body of Krishna. But Krishna didn't feel annoyed by these arrows. According to some commentators, these arrows were like love bites from a lover, even though they drew blood and they were very unfortunate. So even though Bhishma was breaking Kshatriya code by attacking indirectly, attacking the driver of the chariot, he was blessed because Krishna took these as a great blessing. And in the end, when Bhishma was almost dead, and he was pierced by many, many arrows, Krishna actually came to see him. So he was blessed. And then another incident was with Sanatan Goswami, when he was jailed by Nawab Hussain Shah, where he was one of the ministers. He actually was put in prison by the Nawab, and he got out of jail by bribing the jailkeeper. And so the question is sometimes raised that how do these black market type of activities, how can they possess someone who is a very advanced devotee like Sanatana Goswami? So it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally rules are broken. And that it ordinarily is a very abominable thing to bribe somebody. But in this case, it was done for Krishna. And as a result, Sanatana Goswami became a very intimate associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was able to go to him. And because he was very expert at diplomatic affairs, he told the jailkeeper that first of all, he increased the bribe money by about twice. And secondly, he was told by the jailkeeper that he would be criticized, or maybe he would lose his job, or he would even be executed by the Nawab for letting Sanatana Goswami go free. So Prabhupada says I think Krishnadas Kaviraj writes this, and Prabhupada in his purports in Chaitanya Charitamrita tells about this, that Sanatana Goswami, because he was a very, very diplomatic and very great minister, he fabricated a story that the jailkeeper could tell the Nawab. And in those days, they didn't have bathrooms or toilets, and so they defecated out and they passed water out in the fields. So the jailkeeper was very vigilant, and he would accompany Sanatana Goswami out into the fields. And Sanatana Goswami was partly shackled. I don't know if he was completely shackled, but his legs or arms were shackled by iron chains at one point. And then the story that he told the jailkeeper to tell the Nawab that he very suddenly, when he was in the field, he jumped into the river, and the current in the river was so swift that even though the jailkeeper tried to catch him, he was unable to do it because he was far, far downstream. So this was the story that Sanatana Goswami fabricated, and thus the jailkeeper was saved execution or chastisement by his superior, the Nawab. And Sanatana Goswami went on to become a very intimate disciple of Lord Chaitanya. And then there were other instances of this. Sometimes the gopis gave their, when Krishna feigned that he was very plagued by having a headache, and he was unable to get a cure, he said that, well, ask the gopis if they can cure me somehow or other. So they took the dust from their feet, and they were saying that even they could go to hell for this great offensive act by giving the dust of their feet onto the head of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they were breaking rules in a sense, and what they were doing in a sense was very abominable because they were young girls and they thought they could even go to hell, but it would be for Krishna. So because it was for Krishna, they were exonerated from sinful activity. So this happens sometimes. And then there's a lot of instances, but there's a few instances. These are minority things that when Prahlad was still around as a young boy, he watched Nrsingadev bifurcate his own father, and unprotestingly watched the whole situation, and it kind of indirectly was approving of Lord Nrsingadev's action. He watched his own father be killed, and ordinarily this is also a very abominable thing. Someone watching his father be killed and not protesting is very, very sinful and unusual. But because it was being done ultimately for Krishna, Prahlad Maharaj was exonerated from getting a sinful reaction. So very occasionally, and on very rare instances, sometimes people break the rules. One other incident was when Karna lost his chariot, and Krishna advised Arjuna that you can kill him now. And he went on to, and Prabhupada was writing in his purport that it's very much against Kshatriya code to attack someone who's without a chariot. And Krishna, or Arjuna, was very disturbed, and he asked Arjuna before he was killed, "What are you doing?" In a sense, he was saying, "How are you breaking the Kshatriya code by attacking me? And I'm just on my feet without a chariot." So sometimes these sinful activities or unorthodox activities are acted upon, and they can be blessed by Krishna. It's very rare, but it does happen on occasion. And the last incident was once in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one of Lord Chaitanya's servants crossed over his body to protect him. And ordinarily this is very sinful, to cross over the body of any sadhu, what to speak of Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself. So now I have to tell a little bit of an incident that it's a bit of a walk down memory lane about how the song Govindam Purusam came into existence. It was recorded in a recording studio called Trident. We called it Trident. It's like Lord Shiva's trident, spelled like that, Trident, Trident Studios. Probably doesn't exist anymore, but it was very modern. And it was done in that studio in a place called St. Anne's Alley, which is just off, almost in the center of London, off of Tottenham Court Road, near an underground station called Goodge Street. And it's just about 300 meters down the road, and it's called St. Anne's Alley. And the British, having a very bizarre sense of humor, used to call it Sin Anne's Alley instead of St. Anne's Alley. Anyway, the recording studio was slightly underground. You went down a long stairway to the studio, and the studio was approximately 1.5 times the size of this room. Very state-of-the-art, very modern. It wasn't recorded in EMI studios where the Beatles made a lot of their recordings. But because of contracts that George Harrison had with EMI or whatever, the recording was done in a different place called Trident Studios. At that point in time, Trident Studios was a very modern, very well-appointed and very modern, under one flight down recording studio. And the background of this was that George Harrison one day came to Berry Place, and this was about a year and a half after the Hare Krishna Mahamantra was released on Apple Records. And he came up with his guitar to Berry Place. That was where the original temple in London was located, in Berry Place, with his guitar. And he asked the devotees, I was there with Jamuna and Gurudas and a few other people, what are you guys doing these days? And so we told him that we were chanting in a place called the Arts Lab, which was one of the few places in London where hippies could gather. And so we sang to him this Govindam Purusam, just like we did at the Arts Lab, which was about 2 blocks away from Berry Place, and almost in the very geographic center of London. In the very geographic center, Oxford Street crosses Tottenham Court Road. That is the very geographic center. And there's a very tall building there called Center Point, which had fountains in it, and it was unoccupied. It was about 50 stories tall, and that's a whole other story. But just very near that was St. Anne's Alley or Trident Studios. And one of the reasons why they called it St. Anne's Alley was it was very close to the red light district of London. That was very near where the temple is now located, in what they call Soho. And in the Soho section, which is about 20 square blocks of England, there's a lot of prostitution, meeting, gambling. The casinos are very brightly lit up, all 24 hours a day, especially at night. And there's a lot of meat being served in all the restaurants, and it's just a very sinful place. So anyway, after we were saying this to George, he decided that he would make on his guitar chords to the song. So I don't know if you know anything about music, but the chords were C minor, B flat major, A flat major, B major, and C minor again. Govindam Purusam. And if you listen closely, you can hear the instruments. It was a very big room, not very huge room, but about maybe 1.5 times the size of this temple. And there was a flute player named Hari Prasad, who was at that time was a very famous flute player. Violins, violas, cellos, orchestral bells. They were tubular bells that hung down from a horizontal beam. And then there was a harp to give it a kind of celestial flavor, and a Hammond organ. And there were about 20 voices. I was the choir director of the singers. They were all devotees, and they were as they sang, they were kind of swaying back and forth like grown wheat in a wheat field under a breeze. They were all in unison, dancing together and singing. And then there was a Hammond organ that I was playing, and there's a control room. About halfway up the stairway was the control room. It was also below street level, and there was a big sheet of glass and a big, about 2 meter long mixing console, and it was about 1 meter this way vertically, not exactly vertically, but opposite to horizontal, and it was laying down. It was about maybe 1 foot thick, and the dials were these things that you push. It was a 16-track console, and the music was mixed very expertly. The mridanga and the kartals had to be played in a separate room in the recording studio behind what the recording engineers called a baffle, because the ringing of the kartals in the very high partials would distort the other instruments. So the mridanga and kartals were played in a separate room behind a baffle so that they wouldn't distort things, and there were probably, a whole room full of musicians. And the recording was mixed later on this big console by George Harrison. He, being familiar with recording studios, he knew how to mix things. And if you listen closely to the recording, you can hear the harp and the violins and the organ and I was playing a Hammond organ. We took, I think it was 2 takes before it was done. And you can hear the many voices singing. A little later on, I'm going to read some eyewitness accounts of. Well, I was in England at this time. Prabhupada was in India, but he'd heard about it, and someone in England had sent Prabhupada a copy of the recording, and I have a copy of what the recording looked like. Looked like this. I'll just pass this around, and anyone who wants to keep it can keep it. This is what the front cover looked like, and the back cover. It looked something like a little different, but it had the words of the song, and this is what the backside was like. So it was released as a small 45 RPM record, and vinyl they call it. And someone managed to send it to Prabhupada, and he heard it, but he listened to it on a very primitive kind of record player, and he didn't hear it very well. So at his request, it was played in the temple. There was a big controversy over the whole thing because Jamuna, who was leading the kirtan, and another instrument was the Armenian oud. You can hear it after the voice sings, and Hari Vilas, who is from that country, played. It's kind of like a mandolin or a guitar or a balalaika, but it's made in Armenia, and it's got that kind of guitar sound to it. So he was playing, and then we went up to the recording studio to watch George Harrison mix it. And then later on, he called on a drummer named Alan White and an electronic bass player named Klaus Vorman. So it was 16 tracks, but then on a separate date, these people came in to be added to the mix. So it was a classical sounding thing, but it had a kind of rock beat to it because this drummer was playing trap drums like they play in rock music and jazz music with a big bass and a hi-hat and a snare drum and all that. So it had a kind of rock beat to it. And Prabhupada liked it. So this is one account that's on a website called BeatlesBible.point.com. George Harrison produces Govinda. Following the success of the Hare Krishna mantra single by Radha Krishna Temple, plans for a follow-up were made in early 1970. Another traditional chant, Govinda, was chosen. George Harrison produced the session and also played acoustic guitar. That's another thing, that he was, and apart from being in the control room, he was playing his guitar at one of the sessions. Klaus Vorman played bass guitar, while Alan White was the drummer. And then Prabhupada wrote to Shamsundar in 1970, in February, Please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 16 February 1970, along with the Govindam record. I have heard it played on a record player, and although the machine was not very good, still I enjoyed the transcendental vibration very much. So he wanted to hear it in the temple room. Prabhupada asked that it be played on the speakers in I don't know if any of you have been to the Los Angeles temple, but the speakers are about this high off the ground. And they're up near the ceiling. There's two of them, one on the left and one on the right. So Prabhupada wanted to hear them on the big speakers so he could catch all the low notes and the high notes and all the high fidelity. So this is a chapter from Dhanavir Prabhu's book called Srila Prabhupada. The next morning, a moving experience takes place. Srila Prabhupada enters the temple room from the side door, and as soon as the deity doors are opened for greeting, an audio cassette tape of the Govindam plays from the new London album. It's played for the first time over the sound system. Govindam Adi Purusam Tamaham Bhajami. When the altar's folding doors are opened, robust clouds of fragrance billow forth from the frankincense and myrrh incense smoldering upon 2-inch round charcoals. His Divine Grace leads the devotees in slowly offering full prostration before each of the 3 temple altars. Dutifully taking his seat on the red velvet canopy-covered throne, on the red velvet canopy-covered throne of honor, constructed by his disciple Narayan Das, gazing from the Vyasasana upon the gorgeously dressed deities and hearing the precious prayers of Brahma, so sweetly composed, the gentle guru is stunned with spiritual emotions. I mean, the controversy was that that Prabhupada, first of all, that it shouldn't be played in the temple because, after all, it was produced by a karmi. And second of all, a woman's voice was leading the whole thing. But Prabhupada insisted that it be played on the big speaker system while the Guru Puja was taking place. Gazing from the Vyasasana upon the gorgeously dressed deities and hearing the precious prayers of Brahma, so sweetly composed, the gentle Guru is stunned with spiritual emotions. Irrepressible tears glide down from his cheeks even as the song ends in silence. And as the devotees are granted an intimate exchange, from this day forward, Prabhupada requests the movement's centers to daily play the Govindam prayers upon greeting the deities, which I think is still done all over the world. And then there's another person, he was an eyewitness to this thing, and there's another person who was an eyewitness named Bhakta Das. Then Bhakta is a little kind of emotional and dramatic but I'll read what he said anyway. This has been published in the Memoirs books. I was there in Los Angeles when the Govindam prayers were played for the first time in the history of ISKCON. I don't know if it was the very first time in the history of ISKCON, but as Prabhupada entered the temple room, Vishnu Jan turned on the Govindam tape after Prabhupada offered his obeisances to the deities and sat on his Vyasasana. He was feeling such ecstasy that tears were shooting from his eyes. That's what he says. Tears were shooting from his eyes, like serum comes out of a syringe. Those of us who were sitting at the bottom of the Vyasasana were getting showered by Prabhupada's tears, literally showered. You could feel his tears that were shooting out of love. And that was on Memories DVD number 79. And about 4 years ago, a devotee named Karuna Dharani was writing for Back to Godhead magazine. This was published in about 4 years ago, in about 2020. And she writes that Srila Prabhupada became stunned when he heard this. His body shivered and tears streamed from his eyes. In the silence of the moment, the devotees chanted softly. Finally, Srila Prabhupada repeated the refrain from the song, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. And according to one account, he actually sang along with it. And then, in 1975, I don't know when this took place, because probably it was actually not, it took about 6 months for it to be released from the time it was recorded. But another devotee wrote to Prabhupada, and he said he didn't like the fact that it was played in all the temples. Prabhupada was in India at the time. I was in England, and there were a lot of devotees in New Dwarka in Los Angeles. So he writes to him, please accept my blessings. I'm in receipt of your letter dated December 2nd, 1975. No! Exclamation point. You have made some discovery. All along you have been hearing the recording of Jamuna Devi, and now you want to change it. It is not ordinary singing. And this phrase is, he says, it is concert, is an important phrase. It is concert. Many people are singing, so it is not bad. Just like Sankirtan, many voices are there, men and women. So it is the same thing, Sankirtan. I approve of it. Here in Krishna Balaram Temple, he was in Vrindavan, we are hearing the same recording every morning. So if it is good here, why not there? Question mark. I hope this finds you well. That's the end of the letter. And then, there was a conversation that took place between Prabhupada and some devotees in Mayapur on March 20th, 1977. Tamal Krishna says, John Lennon, Govindam record playing in the background, Prabhupada, sounding physically quite weak. At that time, I used to come to Conway Hall. It took at least 1 hour. Then they inquired. In that car, I was singing with this tune, Govindam Adi Purusam. So they adjusted this word, George, Mukunda, and ... Tamal Krishna, Jamuna, Prabhupada, and took up this tune. I was repeating. They were chanting within the car while coming from Conway Hall. This is intelligence, Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna. Not to do anything new, simply to explain in one's own way. Prabhupada, this song was favorite to me since very, very long time. Pause. This album was very popular in Europe and America. And then another conversation, he said that this song was favorite to me since very, very long time. This album was very popular in Europe and America. So those are some of the reasons that this was very much liked by Prabhupada, and the main reason why it is played in all the temples all over the world. So if anyone wants to add anything or ask anything, now is the time.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I'm just curious how you came about to select those two particular verses from Brahma Samhita, because there's 50 plus verses in the Brahma Samhita. Did you sort of get together and go through them all, or how did you come up with just those two particular verses for the recording?
Those are the two verses that Prabhupada taught us to sing. He didn't teach us the whole thing. They're from the 5th chapter of the Brahma Samhita. And those are the two verses that we sang at the art lab. We went once a week to this place called the Arts Lab and chanted, and eventually they just put us in a little room off to the side that was up a stairway, and the ceiling and the walls and everything was painted black. That's why those two verses were used. They're the two verses that Prabhupada taught us to sing, and he sang them himself. Anything else? Any other comments? Okay, so we'll end there. Hare Krishna, thank you very much.
Mukunda Maharaj ki